Hey everybody, how's it going? Happy Monday. Monday, ooh, what a great day. It's my one day off a week, so I'm in pretty good spirits right now. Um, yeah, I have a book review for you today, and that would be My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. Here's the hardcover. You know I like hardcovers here. Nice dust jacket. I'll talk about the formatting and stuff at the end because that's what I like to do. I'm going to keep this spoiler free as I've been tending to do with my book reviews, so you don't have to worry. I won't spoil anything. I'll try to keep things very vague. I don't want to ruin the experience for you, but I'll give you an idea of how I felt about it if you're interested in ever reading it or if you're here because you want a recommendation. Well, I'll tell you straight up if you want to just leave. I recommend it, so that's that. I thought it was good. I recommend it. If you like Stephen Graham Jones stuff, this isn't anything out of left field. You'll like this probably. That's that. All right, let's get into a little bit of a more longer, little bit of a more in-depth, spoiler-free review. Yeah, so what this book is basically about, it's about a girl who's, I think she's like 17, high school kid named Jade Daniels. And she is obsessed with slasher movies. And I mean, I can't understate that. She's obsessed, okay? Freakishly obsessed with I thought I was obsessed with No. Jade Daniels is obsessed with slashers. It's all her personality is. It's all she can think about. It's all she can talk about. She cannot relate to anybody in any way other than thinking of a slasher film. She knows all of them. She knows all of the hidden gems, the underrated ones, everything, all the trivia. I'm going on a long time about that, but it's that extreme. And she basically is starting to see in her little hometown the beginnings of a slasher movie coming to life. At least she thinks that's what's going on. So this book is kind of about her trying to, almost in a way, not make it happen, but she's kind of tagging along for the ride, and she's pretty sure that it's going to happen. That's basically what the book is about in a non spoiler kind of way. And we follow Jade Daniels. And honestly, I can't tell you much more. It's kind of like that. What I will tell you is that if you want to read a straight up slasher and you're like, oh, great, Stephen Graham Jones wrote a slasher, you won't like that. You won't like this if that's what you're looking for. Just, another popcorn slasher. That's not what this is, okay? Like I just read Clown in a Cornfield, which I did not like. But that is just that's an example of a recent slasher book, right? This is not that because this book is Stephen Graham Jones, and this is my opinion, of course. All this is obviously my opinion, so take that with a grain of salt. But what I got out of this was that this was him doing two things basically. It's a love letter to slashers, and it's a kind of a fuck you to slashers. It's like a big middle finger in some ways. And I say a love letter because, first off, I know that I love Stephen Graham Jones. I just love him. He really is one of my favorite authors now. I mean, I just dig him. But he loves slashers. If you follow him, you watch interviews with him, he likes them a lot. And so there is a reference on virtually every page, and I don't think that's an exaggeration. I would say probably at least every other page there's a reference to some sort. And sometimes it's the cool stuff that everybody knows. Sometimes it's really obscure movies that I thought was cool, and sometimes the references are really like wink wink. This one's for the true fans. Like there are some references in here that I was like, whoa, I haven't thought about that in a while. And some went over my head because I didn't know the movies, right? Or like the movies aren't even referenced, and and you just get some sort of like little Easter egg, so to speak. So there's a lot of fun references in here. Excuse me. Take a sip of coffee here. And sometimes that gets on my nerves when there's too many references. It's like, okay, we get it, and I've mentioned that before, but it can work, and especially in a book like You by Caroline Kepnes, there were a lot of modern references that worked so well because it was almost satirical in nature. And in a way, that's how this book felt to a degree. Not totally like satire, but it definitely had that like meta kind of vibe to it at times. There's a meta, post meta thing in there with Scream being meta. You know, you could think about it in many weird ways. So that was fun, and then I say a fuck you, because it's like, it's in a way like the slasher genre. It's like Stephen Graham Jones was like, let's look at all the individual parts of what makes a slasher movie tick and work, and he took them all apart, placed them out on a table, and then went to each individual section and dissected that and under a microscope. If that makes, I know that's kind of esoteric, but that's how the book felt. Like he was dissecting what made the slasher work, and he was trying to, almost at times, like parts of it he would make super meta, and then parts he would take a hyper realistic route with. So there's all sorts of different things happening in this book that I appreciated. But going back to my original point, though, that if you just want a bare, you know, no, not bare bones, but just a run of the mill slasher, which is great a lot of the times, I'm sure we all love that stuff, that's not what you're going to get. You're going to get a lot of interesting things in here. And, you know, I know that a lot of people didn't actually care for this book. In fact, a couple people that I highly respect their opinion that I know didn't like this, that normally love Stephen Graham Jones, and a couple of my Goodreads friends and YouTube friends didn't like it. And just in general, I've seen generally his books do very well in the community of folks who read him. And this one in particular seemed to not do as well. And I can understand why, because people maybe were looking for the slasher, or just felt like whatever he's trying to do is not clicking with me. So that might be the case for you. Also, I will say, like I said in the beginning, I liked it, but there's a couple issues I had with it. In particular, it gets kind of slow sometimes, because in terms of, and this is maybe just, this is a little spoilery, so maybe if you don't want any spoilers, I won't spoil what happens, but talking about the flow of the book, that it's slow at times. At times I'm like, I don't feel like anything's happening. Now, of course, if I were to like pick this book apart and give you like a SparkNotes summarization, of course, yeah, things are happening. Here's what happens in this chapter, but like in terms of action and making it feel like the plot is really moving, it just doesn't. There's not a lot of action in this book. You get little sprinkles of things here and there to tide you over a little, but there truly is not a lot of action until the back end of the book. Like really till like the 11 o'clock section of this book, if you will. There's just not much going on. So you have to really wait for a release in this book. And in going down that route, those sections that don't have that standard slasher action that you're used to are sometimes a little draggy. And I did actually find myself a touch bored at times, because, he's a character-based author. He tends to focus more on the characters than the plot, and I kind of prefer that, to be honest. But sometimes you're like, I wish this just moved forward a little quicker. That was actually one of my very minor complaints with The Only Good Indians, is that I felt occasionally like, I think this could move a little quicker. This book is quadruples down on that, right? It can be very slow at times, and at times you're just like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, I'm just waiting for shit to happen. So I think it pays off, but I just really see why people didn't jive with this one like they did with other ones, because it's not what you're expecting. It can be a little slow, and that's all I have to say about that, to quote Forrest Gump. The main character in this book, Jade Daniels, I really liked, and I can also see people not liking her. She's not a very likable character. She's not a very reliable character. I like characters I like scumbag characters. Like, I like scumbag main characters. I like when you're forced in a book to follow a piece of shit. Like, it can be a fascinating way to read a book, to get through their head. It doesn't make you sympathize or empathize with them. It just gives you a different perspective you're not normally offered. She is not quite a like massive piece of shit, but she's not really like the heroine, kind of final girl that you would expect. And is she the final girl in this book? Isn't she? That's something you'll have to find out. It's a very interesting book with the way that it does things. I'll leave that up to you to discover, like all sorts of things. There's many other characters in this book I'm not even going to mention that I'll just let you discover on your own. But I thought she was a fascinating character. She's kind of rough. She's, like I said, she's a 17-year-old girl. She kind of dresses in a kind of unique way. She's got an attitude. She's got a bunch of issues. She chain smokes. She swears. I just thought she was a cool character. She worked for me. I could see her not working for people, but yeah, this book at this so overall thoughts, I really liked it, but at times I felt I was quite honestly a little bored. And I didn't even mention, but it is true for Stephen Graham Jones. Like I said before, first off, and I should have mentioned this in the beginning in my very brief section, that if you're not accustomed to reading his books, he does have a very unique style. And the only way I could describe his writing style is like Stephen Graham Jones is telling you the story rather than like a narrator he wrote is reading the story. And so occasionally it can get confusing. As a matter of fact, the first sentence in the book I had to reread 2 times because I was like, what? If you like audiobooks, I have listened to his audiobooks before, and they do make more sense for some reason via audiobook sometimes, but I prefer to read the book. But that's just one thing to keep in mind. And occasionally he has a tendency to make major, like huge plot moments that just boom are like done and over and just we were on to the next thing. And sometimes you almost miss what happened. You're like, what? Wait, did that just that didn't happen? And you have to go back and reread, and sometimes you're still confused. And that's just how he writes. Like there are times where I'm like, I'm not exactly sure what happened. So sometimes I would have to reread things and think about things, and sometimes I'm just like, all right, I don't know what just happened, so I'm going to keep going and see if the blanks are filled in later. Yeah, that's all I can say. I gave it like a 3.5 or maybe a 4 on Goodreads. Again, this guy just writes so well. Like this book is very well written. There's no question about that. It's a very well written book. But honestly, like I said, like there just are massive sections where I wasn't really into it. And again, I don't want to spoil things, but like after I read it, I was given some different perspective on things, which definitely I'm like, okay, I see what he was going for here, and it made me rethink sections of the book, which I always appreciate. But I'm like, if you don't bring these things up at least a little more frequently, we kind of, as the reader, forget about these things. And then when we get to certain reveals of plot points, you're kind of like, instead of going, oh my God, yeah, you're like, oh yeah, that thing. So I don't know. It didn't work as well as I thought it would. But am I disappointed I read it? No. Although again, like I said, there again at times I was just like, I want to get this book done so I can get on to the next one. It didn't grip me like it has the past couple books I've read that have all been really, really good. But with that being said, I will read the sequel. And if I could give my final negative of this book, at times it almost felt like he was writing for the sequel. Like he knew there's going to be 3 books in the series, at least 2. So I'm going to save some stuff for the next book. It almost felt like that, like he was holding back some things at times because this is part of a larger series. And I'm not a fan of that. But yeah, My Heart is a Chainsaw. It's a 400-page book. I think it was $3.98 in hardcover. So it's not a long read. It really does fly by pretty quickly. Here's the man himself, Stephen Graham Jones. I recommend it, but it wasn't my favorite. But I will read the sequel, and I am looking forward to reading the sequel. I'm not just going to read it because I have to. I'm interested. And the stuff that he did come up with was very Stephen Graham Jones, and I felt at home when a lot of that stuff happens. So I don't want to make this go on too long. Of course it is, because it's me, but if you're new here, I always like to review the formatting and everything because I'm weird and I like that stuff. So here's the hardcover, gray with red lettering. I think it looks sharp. This is I didn't measure this, but this is slightly smaller than your standard like trade hardcover. It's I don't know what you call these. A little bit of a smaller size. I tend to prefer the bigger ones, like the 6x9s or whatever. This is maybe like a 5x8, but I liked the size of this. It was nice. You get these cool little things in here. And there's some interesting. I didn't even mention. I'm not even going to mention it. It's not really a spoiler, but I'm just going to let y'all discover that. yeah, good cream paper, standard. It's standard stuff. Cream paper. Font was easy to read. There were no issues in the book. There were no errors. Everything looked good. Standard reading experience. The formatting presentation was fine. You know, nothing magnificent. Cover was fine. That's okay. It's minimalist. It works. I'd like to see maybe like, I'm sure that like Cemetery Dance or someone will do a special edition and do some cool artwork or something, but this one's fine. Yeah, so that's that. Thanks for watching. If you read this, you know, I will say that just if you want to comment, just keep it spoiler free, because I think we're gonna do that from now on. I think that's the route I'm going. But if you did read this, feel free to comment and let me know what you thought. If you didn't like it, that's completely. If you hated it, that's fine. We can all disagree here. It's always cool with me. The next book I'm going to read is probably the Imago Sequence by Laird Barron. I mentioned I got this. I really wanted to read it. I really want to read Ohio by Stephen Markley. That's been on my TBR for a while, but I don't know if I want to quite jump into another novel, and that's like a big 600-page novel. So I think I'm going to read at least some stories from this to tide, you know, almost as a palate cleanser, though. I don't know if Laird Barron could be considered a palate cleanser. But yeah, man, that's what's up with me. I have some more Blu-rays I'm going to review for you, and maybe some video game stuff. But yeah, I'll be back soon. And I have a cologne I will be reviewing for you, Happy Land signature new release, two new releases actually, and some other stuff. So keep tuned. And thank you for watching as always. Tell me what you've been up to. I like hearing from you folks. And I'll see you next time. Peace out.